We'll start with you, Warren, because when we talk about alternative energy and how we're going to move forward in the future, we're a very impatient country, and we talk about what are we going to do with cars, what are we going to do with this, and we expect that answer to come in the next 6 months or the next year, but in all reality, anything that we do, that we change, is going to take some time. So how can we move forward knowing that major changes might take 10 or 15 years?
And the long-term perspective is a good one for you to bring into it, as you have. A process that's in the state of Missouri has served us very well. One of the reasons we have among the lowest electric rates in the country right now is we have something called an integrated resource planning process for identifying the next appropriate resources to build. And this involves looking at our projections for future demand, our current supply resources, which identifies a wedge of needed electric capacity to serve in the future. And then we look at different sorts of resources, renewables, hydroelectric, you look at solar, you look at wind, you look at coal, natural gas, nuclear, and different sorts of units, and energy efficiency programs fit prominently into that analysis. And this isn't just the utility working on this process. This involves stakeholders. For instance, Ameren UE in 2007 conducted about 24 or participated in 27 stakeholder meetings with the Office of Public Counsel, PSC, DNR, environmental groups to work on inputs, look at outputs from that modeling. That process identified 3 particular areas of investment needed to meet that future wedge of unserved load and do so with the minimum impact on customer bills, and identified energy efficiency as a major piece of that.
And Vic, Peabody Energy has been doing well at St. Louis. For those of you who aren't from St. Louis may know or not know, but St. Louis is home to 2 of the largest coal companies. Coal is a big issue. It's been an energy source for a long, long time, and people are looking towards perhaps clean coal technology or other alternative forms. But at the same time, are we competing with the Chinas, the Indias, for not just coal, but other kinds of energy technology?
We are, Debbie, and that's important for all of us to realize. And I think it's the first place to start when you're looking at any type of plan is what your asset base is. And from our perspective, when it comes to Missouri in particular, but even the United States, our asset base is heavily coal. 85% of our energy resources in the U.S. consist of coal. It's probably 40% of the world electricity right now. IEA came out a week or 2 ago saying that percent is expected to grow to 44% over time. China is building 1 to 2 coal plants per week. India is going to be the fastest growing coal importer in the world over the next 20 years. 75 nations are building new coal fuel generation. So it's important that we keep it in the mix. It's half of the U.S. electricity generation. It's well north of that in Missouri. And there's a reason for it. It is low cost. Cost isn't everything, right? I mean, we have growing expectations from an environmental perspective. And if you look at what's been done in terms of clean coal, really you have to look back about 30 or 40 years because our definition of that has changed over time. Back in 1970, clean coal would have been simply putting some type of soot or a particulate matter removal on it. When you got into the 1980s and 90s, it was about scrubbing the SO2 and the NOx. And then mercury became a challenge and an identified element that we wanted to manage better. As a result, we're able to remove 70, 80, 90, 99.9% in the case of particulate matter from the stacks on those products. So the next challenge is CO2. And we too, over time, will be able to remove the CO2 from this. There's a process called carbon capture and storage, which takes the CO2 out of the stacks, puts it right back underground, can use it, in fact, for a greater enhanced oil recovery and other elements to be able to get even more energy from that CO2. So all of those are meant to improve the environmental friendliness of the product and to use what is America's most abundant energy resource.
Since we're talking about renewable energy and we just had an election, Warren, I wanted to ask you real quickly about Proposition C, because it passed very handily in the state of Missouri, requiring a certain amount of renewable energy. You mentioned solar power, and I know that that was one of Ameren's problems with the bill, is that it required a certain amount of solar energy, which they didn't think was going to be very useful in Missouri. But overall, how much will Proposition C affect Missouri, do you think?
Well, the Prop C included things like 15% renewables by 2021. There's a 1% rate impact cap in the Prop C. It includes a solar percentage mandate, so there's I think it's 2% of the renewable piece would come out of solar panels. And it would prohibit hydro other than small hydro or hydro that doesn't require a new dam, and allows compliance with renewable energy credits, which are sort of a piece of paper that you've bought from another generator of renewable energy that says you've bought the green attribute of that energy as a means for compliance. Understand first and foremost, people who, if somebody expresses a concern about the structure of Prop C, some say, well, you're against renewables. Well, understand, I grew up in a passive solar home. I have a photovoltaic panel and fuel cell. I'm very, very supportive of renewables, as are all of my members. That's why you're seeing it one of the top 3 resources they're investing in going forward, and why one of my members is already there. And there were already investment plans in place prior to Prop C. Will this change those investment plans? I don't know that it will. It may, because there's some, the 1% rate cap and the renewable energy credit aspects of it, create, that if there's a cheaper means to purchase RECs instead of building a resource, there's going to be challenges in the regulatory process to say you should have bought the RECs instead of building a wind resource or building a photovoltaic resource. One of the concerns is we're trying to maximize the level of renewables we bring in up to that 1% rate impact cap. And if you have a mandate for something like solar that costs about 4 times as much as wind on a kilowatt hour installed basis, you're taking some of those dollars and moving them out of a least cost renewable resource over to another resource that's renewable, and it ends up reducing your overall number of kilowatt hours you're generating that way.